Hey, everybody, it's Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Got a loaded show for you guys today. Happy Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas Eve. Well, Merry Christmas to you guys, but super excited for Jason McKie to join me in the Hang Ron Johnson segment. Former Bears fullback, played in the Super Bowl, but now he's a sideline reporter for the Bears. So he's got some good stuff to say about who's going to be the next Bears head coach. Also, he talks about culture. Do the Vikings have the culture to get to the Super Bowl the way the Bears did? I think there's some comparison there with the Vikings locker room and the Bears Super Bowl locker room. We'll talk about all that and much more coming up next on the Ron Johnson Show.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now the Ron Johnson Show. On the field, in the broadcast booth, Ron Johnson is Minnesota sports. He's played with them, hung out with them, and grown up with all the big names in Minnesota sports. They're hanging out with Ron Johnson. It's the Ron Johnson Show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. And it starts now.
Hey, everybody, it's Ron Johnson. It's a beautiful Tuesday. No snow on the ground. We're excited in Minnesota. Santa Claus is coming to town, and that man Jordan Love is coming to town as well. Vikings are going to play the Packers coming up. We're going to talk about that. Vikings just beat the Seahawks. They exercise that demon. The last time they beat Seattle, somebody said it was like 2006, which I'd have to go back and check. That seems a little crazy, but that might be true. Also, we got Jason McKie joining me in the Hang Ron Johnson segment. Former Bears fullback, has a lot to say about Super Bowl culture. And he talked about the Bears locker room. So you guys don't want to miss that, because the Vikings, I think, have what he's talking about when he tells some of these stories about the Bears. And I think the Vikings, 15, 20 years from now are going to be able to look back and be like, man, this is what we have, what the Bears had. The biggest difference is, can they get over the hump and win the Super Bowl? Well, there's one thing that has changed since that Super Bowl as well. You'll hear Jason McKie talk about that, but I want everybody to know you can start the season off with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets. That's $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And you guys remember, I did that. My first bet, I bet on the Lakers to cover. It was a sweaty one, but they came out on top. I think they were 6-point favorites, and they ended up winning by like 7. And it was at one point almost won by 5, and I would have been annoyed by that, but they won by 7, so they covered. And I still got that money in there, people, because I don't just go out there and just throw money around. I like to bet for fun, but I still have that in there. So just think, $250 of FanDuel's money that you can go out and play some more bets on the Minnesota Vikings, because these next 2 are going to be tough, but there are some games out there. When I look at the schedule, I've picked some winners. 16 games, I'm always 13 out of 16 because there's a couple upsets here and there. But some of these games are bet-proof. They're foolproof. There's no way if you bet against the Giants, you don't win with the Eagles. There's no way if you don't bet against the Cowboys to lose to the Eagles, you won't win. Trust me, $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets. Well, now as I bring my producer to the show, co-host Sam Ekstrom, we got to jump into this, Sam. Seahawks, Minnesota Vikings. We broke it down heavily on the postcast. Mm-hmm. One thing that I was impressed with, DK Metcalf. So DK Metcalf hadn't had a touchdown since week 7. He gets a touchdown against the Minnesota Vikings. But Sam, he only had 3 catches for 57 yards. Like DK Metcalf in the past, whether it's Cam Dantzler and the Paul Allen great call of, what are you doing? Like, he's annoyed the Vikings to no bit. Not only him, I feel like Tyler Lockett has been there forever. You could go back to numerous Seahawks receivers that have given the Vikings trouble. They didn't have that issue. Now, Jackson Smith and Jigba, he got off, but he didn't have over 100 yards. I mean, as much as it felt like, I think it was 12 targets, he had less than 100 yards, Sam. So when you think about that, the way the Vikings handled the Seahawks, I'm impressed by Gilmore coming off of a hamstring, which is great now, because that was maybe a tone up or a test. So hopefully, as he's resting yesterday, they get to rest on Christmas Eve. My guess is, though, they probably got to ask, hey, guys, do you guys want an easy Christmas practice, or do you guys want a long Christmas practice? And guys probably said easy, coach. We want an easy Christmas practice. So I guarantee They did a little bit of legwork today, Christmas Eve, some install maybe to make Christmas easier, meaning get up, celebrate with your families, do whatever you do. But two things, either we're going to practice a little later or super early. Give me super early, coach. Let's get in here at 6 a.m. Let's get this practice out the way. I'm pretty sure PJ Fleck is doing something similar with his team because they have a bowl game coming up. Let's get in, coach. Let's get in early. Let's go 6 a.m. so we're all home by like 9, 10 a.m. That means the kids are just getting up. They're waiting for daddy to come home, and they can open up their gifts. But, Sam, when you look at this Seahawks team and how the Vikings handled them, now the Packers destroyed them. Now they have to go play the Lions. So the Seahawks are getting the worst of it. This is the worst stretch of their season. And I don't think looking at the beginning of the season, they thought the Vikings, Lions. I know they think the Lions, maybe the Packers, but I don't think they thought the Lions would have been their toughest three games. Or sorry, the Vikings. But this is the toughest three. This is the three of the best teams in the NFC, and they have to play all three in a row. But Sam, they handled the Seahawks. And I think that voted well for what they're going to have to deal with the next 2 weeks, which is two highly touted offenses that move the ball. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, let's think about the Vikings defense the last handful of weeks and all of the backups that have stepped up in absences.
Yeah.
So whether it's Fabian Moreau coming in for Stephon Gilmore, I know not on Sunday, but the last couple of weeks, Fabian Moreau, really solid. On Sunday, Theo Jackson steps in for Harrison Smith.
Yep.
I don't think there was a single play where I said, oh, man, Theo Jackson, make that play, man. He was solid, and he had the interception to seal it. You look at Jalen Redmond stepping in. You look at Kamu Grugier-Hill stepping in with Ivan Pace out. So many reserves have stepped up and done a great job for this Vikings team. And now, this week, Ron, they've got the full defense back. Harrison Smith coming back, Jalen Redmond probably coming back, and Ivan Pace coming back. So now you're fully healthy. You've established that you have great depth. And now you take on probably your two biggest tests of the year. This is how you want to end the season against the two biggest tests in the NFC, Ron. I know Philadelphia is there as well, but I can't think of a harder way to end than Green Bay, as hot as they are, coming off a 34-0 win, and the Lions offense. I know that Lions defense is banged up, but the Lions offense. So your defense, which is now healthy, is going to get the ultimate tests to end the season. You pass step one, winning in Seattle. Really, really hard to do. And now you get the Packers at home, and they're on a short week, Ron, and they've got the same Christmas distractions that you just talked about. So we'll see who has the prep advantage coming into Sunday.
Yeah, and for them, their Christmas Eve, because usually this is the after the game, you got to get ice and stem and treatment and all that stuff. Now, they did absolutely destroy. It wasn't even a game. It didn't even feel like a game. They destroyed the Saints. No. They are making a statement to the NFC. If you look at their last two, Seattle and then New Orleans, they are putting their foot on people's throat. And so for them, it's a confidence boost coming into Minnesota. Now, here's the thing. If Minnesota absolutely handles and kills Jordan Love and just makes them see ghosts, then you have to say Brian Flores' defense is legit, because this is a team that has put up numbers. I mean, their defense shut out. I think they shut out. I stopped watching, shut out the Saints. I'm pretty sure the Saints didn't score because I stopped watching. I think right when they got to 33, I think it was the last score I saw. And I was like, all right, this is over with. But you got to understand what the Vikings have in store. You want to get into you're in the playoffs. So this is where it gets weird, because normally at this point you're like, do we rest guys? Look at some of our older guys. Do we rest them? That's what it felt like. Harrison Smith was a little bit of well, if he had to go, if it was a playoff game, he probably goes, but it's hey, we think Theo can get this done, man. Let's make sure you're fully ready to go, because we are not done after 2 weeks. We have a week or two, because in their mind right now, playing the 4 seed, whether it's the Bucks or the Falcons, I think the Vikings feel very confident. The odds makers feel very confident the Vikings are going to win that game, and then they have to go to Detroit to play the Lions if the higher seeds do what they're supposed to do, but I don't think they will. I think the Packers do the Vikings a favor. And maybe we'll talk about that too, is do you want to, maybe on the football part, I don't know if you guys have one this week, but would you rather play the Eagles or the Lions? And that's the question in the playoffs. Do you want to go to Detroit, or do you want to go to Philly? Do you want the Packers or anybody else behind you, the Packers or the Commanders, to help you out so that you don't have to? But if the Commanders help you out, you don't have to go through Philly. So now you still have to maybe go through, because the Commanders beat the Eagles, which could happen. And because the way the Commanders look right now, I mean, come on now, They could beat the Eagles now in the playoff game. Because isn't that who they just beat? Or no? Yeah.
No,
right?
they didn't. Yeah. 36-33. They turned it over a million times and still won that game. That was in Washington.
That's what I thought. I'm like, I know I'm not imagining this. And so the Commanders could easily beat the Eagles. And now the 7th seed has to go to Detroit. And the Vikings get the 3 seed that would win, I think, if they won. And so now you got the Vikings Rams, which is another rematch. So like this is what I think the NFL sit back like, I don't think we could have drew this up any better. Vikings get to go play Michael Penix Jr. and Kirk Cousins has to watch his team go to the playoffs while the Vikings come to visit him and he doesn't get to play. Question is he disgruntled and is he going to text Kevin O'Connell like, hey, by the way, when Michael Penix gets under center and he does this on his butt, he's throwing a fade route, man. Just keep somebody behind Drake London and you'll be all right. Like, I'm not saying he'll do that. But we do know there was a catcher, I forgot what team, was giving the other team the pitching sign.
Oh, yeah, the Twins prospect. Yeah, that's right. Classic.
So we do know there's some people out there. But the Kirk Cousins is a man of integrity. He would not do that. But it'll be interesting to see, like, does he buddy up to the Vikings? Like, hey, maybe they'll bring me back for cheap because they know the Falcons owe me all this money and I'm willing to take a hometown discount to come back home and help the Vikings win a Super Bowl and give J.J. McCarthy another year to sit. Like, and that's another question. Do you take Sam Darnold for $41 million or Kirk Cousins for cheaper, for another 10? Like, I mean, that's what we're looking at. It could be Kirk Cousins for 10 and Sam Darnold for 41. And now that's even a better conversation to have. But Sam, when you look at the Vikings, Vikings, Packers, quickly, I'm looking at this game as I feel like it's going to come down to the defense of Brian Flores. We know the Packers offense now is healthy. Romeo Doubs is back. Jordan Love seems to be like that ankle and whatever he was missing earlier seems to be fine. But Brian Flores, like you said, getting all the pieces of his defense back, that's going to be the key to this down the stretch is can Brian Flores' defense, because I think the Vikings can score on the Packers, no problem. Like the Packers defense looked good, but the Saints offense with Spencer Rattler looks horrible. Like, and I don't know if it's just Spencer Rattler or if it's that team or the offensive line or the coaches. I have no idea, but it just looked bad. I saw somebody tweet, say it looks like JV playing against varsity. It did. It looked very bad. It did not look competitive at all. And so when you think about Brian Flores, it's going to come down to him making sure Jordan Love feels very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. And this is not the same Packers team the Vikings faced earlier in the season. This Packers team is better. They're a little bit more seasoned. Feels like they've exercised some demons, getting some wins that people didn't expect them to get. Malik Willis came in and helped out very well for when Jordan Love was out. But now Jordan Love's back, and so that's the key. In US Bank Stadium, the crowd noise is going to be very important as well. But Sam, do you think, do you think, because again, we keep saying we hate one-score games, but do you think this Christmas gift, I guess you want to call it, prime time, 325, the NFL knew what they're like, come on now, border battle versus all these other games, and 2 of the top teams going to the playoffs? Yeah, no, we have to make this the prime time. And then I think you might get Tom Brady because it's Fox.
I think you're right.
So you get the prime time Tom Brady. And that's the only reason I'm like, man, I kind of want to be there because I want to meet Tom. Like, I want to go into the booth and be like, hey, Tom, like, you don't remember me, man, but I'm from Detroit. I remember you when you were at Michigan, you were at Michigan when I was at Minnesota. You guys came and beat us. You cheated, but you beat us. Didn't know you deflated balls in height in college, but I guess you did. But, good luck today. So that's the only reason I would want to go is just to meet Tom Brady quick to remind him of, because he was a sophomore. Or no, he was a junior. Sorry, my freshman year, because that was the year that Drew Henson came in, and then the next year was when him and Drew split time, and everybody's like, oh, I don't know if this Brady guy's good enough to be a top NFL quarterback if he can't even hold his job at Michigan. And then we know the story is written. So, and Sam Darnold kind of feels that way. Like, people didn't give him credit, and now look at him. Like, he's potentially, somebody's willing to pay him right now. It sounds like people are willing to pay him $100+ million right now, going from a guy that barely could find a job to now everybody, not everybody, but a handful of teams want to pay him a lot of money. But Sam, when you look at this Packers-Vikings game, your thoughts quick before we jump over into the because we already talked playoffs. We talked about the possible playoff picture of where they go. And now actually one more question before we get out of here.
Well, I'm willing to say that the Vikings will not enjoy a 28-0 lead in the first half in this one. I mean, the last game at Lambeau just worked out so perfectly. It was touchdown, interception, touchdown, turnover on downs. That was the script was written so favorably for the Vikings in that game. Packers, charged late, wasn't enough. Minnesota won that game. Even though it was a 2-point game, it felt a little more handily than that. The Packers are a different team now. I mean, Jordan Love wasn't healthy in that game. He's healthy now. Josh Jacobs is cruising. I feel like those young receivers are kind of coming into their own, too, on the offensive side. Tucker Kraft is insanely good. So this is going to be a test. There's going to be a lot of Packers fans in the crowd, unfortunately. It's going to feel real hostile in that building. And look at this, Ron. Look at who the Packers have lost to this year. Eagles, week 1 in Brazil, twice to the Lions, and once to the Vikings. So they've lost to a 12-win team and then a couple of 13-win teams on the year. And you know what else, Ron? If the Packers win this game and then the Vikings lose to the Lions in week 18 and the Packers beat the Bears in week 18, the Packers jump the Vikings. The Packers would take the 5 seed.
That's crazy.
Which, I mean, it's not a huge difference, 5 or 6, but I would definitely rather play the Falcons than the Rams, in that first round. That could be a big difference. So this is a big game. Even if you don't win the division, you still want to have that 5 seed, I think, especially now with Penix as the starter.
And the other thing, too, about that is the 5 to 6 seed decides on who you get, because the 6 seed you win, you get the Lions. 5 seed you win, you probably get the Eagles. And I think that's the other part of this is like, who would you rather play in this? Who would you rather get to, get you to the Super Bowl? I think the Lions are primed, which is so crazy because like last year, what was it? It was 49ers Lions. And now we're talking, it could be the Eagles, the Lions, the Vikings, Packers. Like it just feels too good to be true. Like it does. But, and again, the Eagles aren't bulletproof. They do run the ball well. And that's the question for you, Sam. Like, would you rather go to Philly or go to Detroit for your way to the Super Bowl?
I would rather go to Detroit.
Okay.
I mean, that the defense is so vulnerable to me, right? I mean, that defense is gettable. You could score 30 plus and win a shootout. I just going to Philly, got some PTSD there, obviously. Their running game, that crowd, I don't think I want to deal with it. I'd rather go to play the team that you know really well. Anything can happen. And they're the least healthy team. So that would be my choice. What about you?
Yeah, so I was going to say Eagles, but you're kind of right. I forgot about the defense of the Lions being terrible, and it just becomes a shootout. And then it's like, who can stop who first? And I do feel like Flores, because they are down one running back, I feel like Flores, now Gibbs is still legit, like still a fast jitterbug, but can he carry the ball 30 to 40 times? Probably not. And so can you force them into 3rd and longs? Because like their 3rd down defense this past week against the Seahawks was awesome. Force them into a lot of unfavorable situations. The Vikings offensive line, and correct me if I'm wrong, only had 1 false start, right? Or did I miss one?
That sounds about right to me.
I think they only had 1
game.
Yeah, it was late in the game because everybody talked about the 12 and, they're going to rattle them. And that was one of our questions on the pregame show. Will the Vikings offensive line have 2 or more false starts? And I said, no, they won't. Ben Lieber, everybody else said, yes, they will because of the crowd noise. And they made me look good. Now, what really pissed me off was Aaron Jones was supposed to be 100 total yards. He had like 94. I'm like, come on, man. The other one was the interceptions. They said, would Geno Smith throw 2 or more? I said, nope, he's only going to throw 1. He threw 1. And then, of course, the end of the game. And now when I watched it back, the receiver for sure ran the wrong route. Like, if you watch it back, he was expecting an out route, and the receiver ran a corner route. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And again, I didn't want them to complete it, but I did kind of want them to complete it. Like, just complete it. Let's end the game without an interception. Maybe a strip sack fumble or something, but not a pick. And so, so he got the 2 picks. So I kind of lost that one there. But I think that's going to be the key to this game when you think about the Vikings defense. They are very good. I'd rather get the Rams. Like, I want the Commanders to beat the Eagles so that now if the Packers or whoever, they have to go play the Lions and then we get to go play the Rams. That would be perfect. Like, I would rather it go that way. Like, I would rather not have to do that. I want to play the Rams, let the Lions get, a surging Packers, because I think the Packers can win as well. So the Packers would play the Rams.
Packers and Rams would be in the 6-3 game in the
so
wild
we'd have
card
to play
round.
the Packers. So then, would you take the Packers, I guess, Or no, because if the Rams beat the Packers and then the Commanders beat the Eagles, Commanders go to the Eagles, we get the Rams. So yeah, it still could work out that way. Yep. So yeah, I take the Rams. Give me the Rams or the Packers though, but I would rather have the Rams. Actually, and that's the thing, the 3 versus the 6, I'd rather have the 3. Like I would not want to play the Packers. I don't want the Packers feeling familiar.
Best year I think yet with the 17 format where any team can win any of these games. I don't think there's really that much difference between the Commanders and the Eagles right now, obviously, because they just beat them. Sure. I think it's a pretty level playing field. A lot of times those wild card games have been a joke. Not this year. I mean, this year upset alerts all over the place. So I can't wait.
Yeah, because even that, would you rather host the Packers at home or travel to LA to play the Rams? Because that's the other way it could work out. If the Commanders somehow knock off the Eagles, would you rather play at home with the Packers or go on the road with the Rams? It's even that one's tough. Like, I kind of want to stay home. Like, I kind of want the home crowd and the noise. And I mean, but we'll see how this Packers game goes because, like you said, the Vikings could lose 2, Packers can win 2. And I didn't even realize that they could be the lower seed. But we got to jump over to Jason McKie because here's one thing I want you guys to pay attention to in this interview. He mentions culture in the locker room, and the reason they got to the Super Bowl was because the guys were a real brotherhood in the locker room. And when you watch the pregame practices, the celebration practices and all that, it feels real together. Like it feels like guys showing up to like dance, drills, study, like it's like, like they're in the Boy Scouts or something or a glee club. And so it just feels real together in the locker room. And that's what the Bears had. They got them to the Super Bowl because if you think back, Rex Grossman probably wasn't the best option for quarterback back then, but he got them to a Super Bowl because of the rest of the pieces. That defense, of course, was really good as well with Brian Urlacher and Lance Briggs, but Peanut Tillman, I mean, you can name the names, but that was the big thing for that team. And then, of course, they had Devin Hester back there returning kicks. But we got Jason McKie coming up next in the Hang Around Johnson segment, and we'll do that after word from our sponsors.
All right, Game Time is the best way to get tickets to sporting events in this town. We're talking about NFC Championship game. Well, guess what? On Game Time, you can get advanced tickets to the NFC Championship game here in the Twin Cities. $738 to get in the door. You probably won't find a better deal anywhere else, to be honest with you. That's going to be the hardest ticket maybe in the history of this town. If the Vikings get there, check out the options at Game Time. Get the all-in pricing. Look at the best deals. I mean, I'm looking at row 8, upper level row 8, $738. You may have to take out a loan, but hey, the options are there at Game Time if you want to get advanced tickets to the NFC Championship game. Also get to Target Center, XL Energy Center for the winter sports action. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff, shows you the best deals. You also get the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry and a nice panoramic view from your seat so you know exactly what you're going to get. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
Well, now it's time for the Hang Around Johnson segment, and I caught up with this guy at the Bears game and found out I had the wrong number. But Jason McKie is going to join us in the Hang Around Johnson segment as promised. Former Chicago Bear, sideline reporter for the Chicago Bears. But the biggest thing is Jason McKie, first off, was a part of a Super Bowl team. And so I want to start off there, man, because Minnesota Vikings fans that watch this, NFC North fans that watch this, a lot of people haven't been a part of a Super Bowl. So I want to go there first, man. When you look at the Lions, you look at the Vikings, you look at the Packers, all three have a chance to come out of the NFC this year because they're all three good teams. What is it going to take, though? So for a team like the Vikings, what because you've done this. You've been a part of a locker room, Urlacher, yourself. You got Peppers. You got Peanut Tillman. You got Zuma. Like you got so many guys in there. But what does it take to get to a Super Bowl?
I think you got to have the right chemistry first off in the locker room. You're going to have your blue chip players, your star players, but you also got to have your role players. And your role players, they got to play their role well. Everybody's not going to be the star, but when you're required to make the routine play as a role player, you got to make that play. And you got to have a coach that's going to stick to the formula and whatever that team's identity or whatever that formula is that help get them through the playoffs, but also propel them to a Super Bowl. That's what they got to rely on. So, our formula was we played great defense and we ran the ball really well. And that's what we rode all the way to the Super Bowl. And, And unfortunately, we didn't conquer, the end goal. We didn't win the Super Bowl, but we stuck to our formula all year. We knew what we were good at, and we were able to, ride that wave and make it to the big dance.
Yeah, when you talk about a guy, you talk about role players, and the Minnesota Vikings have a great one. Guy similar to yourself, C.J. Ham, fullback, has been here for a long time. Usage has gone down when you look at a three receiver set team where they don't use the fullback as much, but making special teams plays. I think he made one against the Bears, if I'm not mistaken. It was a big fumble. C.J. Ham recovers the fumble. When you look at role players like C.J. Ham and fullbacks, because like fullbacks are kind of far and few between now compared to back in the day. So for a guy like C.J. Ham, like yourself, being a fullback, being a role player, knowing like, hey, my moment is going to come, but I don't know when. How do guys like that stay locked in? Because we know Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Sam Darnold. You can go to the Packers. You got Jordan Love, Christian Watson. You can go to the Lions. You got Montgomery, which he's hurt, but Gibbs. And, like everybody knows they're a star. But then you have that other guy. It could be the lineman reporting eligible. It could be the fullback. For a guy like that, like C.J. Ham, how do those guys stay in it the entire way in games where maybe you get one touch?
Yeah. I think most fullbacks, you got to have the mindset and the personality of it's not about you, it's about the team. You're not going to get none of the accolades. You're going to be responsible for a lot of touchdowns that you're not going to get credit for, and your name's not going to be in the paper. It's not going to be in the media, but your teammates appreciate what you do. Your running backs, not just the running backs, but the offensive linemen understand, the sacrifice and commitment that you make for the team. You're an extended branch of the offensive line. So what you do is a vital part, of the team. And I know it's a dying breed. So when you talk about C.J. Ham, even other fullbacks around the league, they're not guys that are playing, 40 snaps a game. Like when I played, I probably logged 40 snaps a game, where these guys are probably, hopefully logging 10, depending on how the flow of the game is. But right. It's a crucial part of, especially with the Vikings, having a guy like C.J. Ham, who's a real athletic fullback. I really enjoy watching him because he's dynamic, and he kind of reminds me, not saying he's compared to me, but he reminds me of myself wanting to be so versatile. Yeah. And I think he's a versatile player because he can run the ball, he can catch the ball out of the backfield, but he's an effective lead blocker, and he plays. I think he plays all four phases of special teams as well. Yeah. So You've got a guy you can call him a fullback, but he's a football player. And when you have a guy like that understands his role and plays his role very well, you're going to have to rely on him at some point throughout the playoffs, because if you're a team in the playoffs and you expect to make the Super Bowl, you're going to have to be able to run the ball, Yeah, and I think having that back or that fullback, when you can put him in there when you're struggling to get tough yards, you put him in there and he can make an effective lead block and help you, be able to run that football.
Yeah, and you talked about versatility. I got to give my hat off to not just your versatility, man. I always love to give guys their flowers when I get a chance, and coachability. Like you were a guy, you might not remember this. You probably remember the situation, but I came in as a wide receiver. Lovie Smith said, hey, do you think you can gain some weight and become a tight end? So I moved to tight end, and I never in my life had to worry about who the Mike backer was. Like I never had. I mean, as a receiver, only thing I had to worry about was cat blitz, slot corner blitz. That's it. I never cared about the mic. I never cared about the count, the box count, who's blocking where. And I'll never forget sitting down with Lovie, and I'm like, you know what? Screw it. Let's try it. And if I hadn't gotten hurt, that's the only thing I've ever looked back on, which, I never sit back and say, man, I wish I had done, like it didn't happen. Like I got hurt, couldn't stay around. But I remember being in some of those huddles and hearing some of these like scat left and all this. And I remember like coming to you later, like, hey man, what exactly am I looking at? And you made it pretty simple, man. So I appreciate that because a lot of guys, man, because I remember they were talking about the H-back position. So it was going to be Des Clark at the true Y, and then I'd be the H-back, and, you be the fullback. So I'd be the backside tight end. And I remember like asking you like, hey, if I got to block Izzy Adonijay, what the heck do I do on the backside? Like, and I just remember you saying like, man, just hold on as long as you can. But, hearing you, Des Clark, I just talked to Des Clark. We had B twice on before, Bernard Berrien, nice. And talking to these guys about that stuff, man. So I appreciate you guys because, man, like even talking to Spice all the time about it, like I remember that Bears locker room. And I do tell people that, man, it's a rare locker room. Like it's a rare locker room where it's fun all the time. It's nonstop jokes. It's nonstop. Like, you remember the lady that was our nutritionist, and we had to eat, like, we couldn't eat before, or like we had to eat before 6 a.m. We had a snack that we couldn't eat after like 8 p.m. And I'll never forget like Tank Johnson talking about like driving by Big Burger King, and he's like, man, Burger King never looked so good to me. What am I supposed to do? And the lady's like, just go home. And he's like, I can't. The sign is telling me I got to go get a hamburger. And, you know, and like, I remember like, it was just nonstop jokes and like guys, like, I mean, I think Peanut Tillman, Lovie Smith was telling a story about Peanut, and he's like our all-pro cornerback, and Peanut had to be like a second or third year guy. And I remember Olin Kreutz looking over at Urlacher like, was he at the all-pro meeting with us? Like, I don't remember him being all-pro. Like, just never a serious moment. But I think that was the big thing about that team, man, was like Darryl Drake, you know, rest in peace. Like some of the funnest meetings I've ever had with a receivers coach. And so looking at that though, man, I've asked Cato June this, Reggie Wayne, we've had Tony Dungy, and Tony Dungy told this story. You know, and you probably have heard it because everybody's heard it, but in your mind, they kicked the ball off. Everybody's talking about don't kick the ball off. They kick, you know, Dungy talks about, you know, whatever, I'm a slay Goliath and all this stuff. And I'm not going to be, you know, we're Daniel walking to the Lion's Den. We're not going to be scared of him. Kick it off. Flash bulbs, like Ben Utek was a tight end with that team, you know, Dallas Clark. And so I've got a chance to chat with all those guys about this story, man. And it's just hilarious how everybody kind of looked at Tony like, why? Like, why are you kicking it? And so he returns the kick. In that moment, like, did you just say, like, you know what, Super Bowl, we're about to be champs?
Man, it's funny you say that because, you know, we're in the huddle. You know, at that point, all year I was on the kickoff return team, but during the playoffs, I got taken off because the last game against the Detroit Lions, I actually had a high ankle sprain. So I went into the playoffs with a high ankle sprain. So they were trying to limit my amount of reps on special teams because, like I said, our formula was running the football. So I knew it was going to be, you know, an integral part of the offense. But, you know, I was in the kickoff return huddle, and I remember sitting there, you know, everybody's pumped and excited. And, you know, we assumed that they were going to not kick it to Devin, of course. And, you know, when that ball was kicked, you see all the flashing lights, and you're like, wow, this is crazy. Like, you're in that moment, you're in the Super Bowl, and they kicked it to Hess, and the rest is history. But after he returned the kick, I remember me and Thomas Jones looking at each other, hugging each other, and we both start pointing at our ring finger, like, yeah, we're about to get a ring. Because, you know, during that year, anytime that he returned a kick, it increased our chances of winning the game. And it was, you know, it didn't pan out that way, but, you know, we knew, you know, setting the tone like that in the Super Bowl has never been done before. And it's, you know, the way things are going now with the new kickoff rule and stuff like that, it'll probably never happen again.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like at some point they did limit concussions, but I also wonder, like, how many true concussions came out of kickoff return. Like, I feel like if you eliminate the wedge and the wedge buster, I think that was probably part of the biggest reasons. Like, it was the old school wedge buster combo. And so, you know, I don't know if they'll ever go back to it because that running full start speed, maybe they were thinking that was too dangerous. You know, but again, if you want to make it exciting, if you want to give special teams a chance, because, you know, guys like Devin Hester, you know, it's crazy that his usage or his want to be drafted would have went down. You know, guys wouldn't have saw use for him because they're like, look, they're not kicking it to him. They're not punting it to him. They're, you know, these are safe moments. And so, you know, I hope, and I'm pretty sure the competition committee is looking at it, is going to change. But when you look at the NFC North right now, man, this is probably, especially at the start of the season, it was by far, I think the Bears started, what'd you guys start, 4-2 or something like that? Were the Bears like 4-2 to start
say it
the
again,
season?
Ron?
Were the Bears like 4-2 to start the season?
Yeah. Yeah, they were 4-2 to start the season. And then, you know, you had that Commanders game in which the Hail Mary took place. And then after that game, it was a team that just couldn't rebound and couldn't regroup from that. And it is tough, you know, situations like that where the team, you know, players are hard out and then, you know, the game is taken away. I was there in person. It's never happened to me as a player. And, you know, a lot of those guys, you know, you go in that locker room, you see those guys in the locker room, they were shocked, they were hurt. And, you know, to come back to think they were going to rebound, and then all of a sudden you get blown up by Arizona. Then you get blown up by the Patriots, and the losing streaks just start mounting. It's tough, you know, and now the biggest thing is, you know, guys are reeling, trying to find answers, and the leaders are trying to find ways to lead this team to get them to keep battling. And it just hasn't happened, you know, and the losing streak just keeps mounting up. We just lost to a good Detroit Lions team that had a patchwork defense because of so many injuries. And you know, now we've got, another tough game coming up on Thursday against the Seattle Seahawks, and finish up with the Green Bay Packers. So it's controversy here in Chicago right now. The team's in, it's in bad shape. Guys are frustrated. Coaches are frustrated, making coaching changes, trying to find a coach. So it's a lot of turmoil here in Chicago.
Yeah, when you think about that, the NFC North is absolutely like it's a juggernaut. Like I don't know if 4 teams had ever made it to the playoffs from one division, but at the start of the season, people thought this might be the year. Like the Bears could have been easily the 7th seed. Packers look like they're going to be the 6th seed. Vikings probably going to be the 5th seed, but it'll come down to this Vikings-Lions game unless the Packers somehow upset the Vikings at home. Packers are, as we're recording this, the Packers are about to beat the Saints, and so we know they're going to end up having another win on their belt. So this is the toughest I think anybody's ever seen the NFC North. But I want to talk about one guy specifically because when the season started, they had the Vikings quarterback room ranked like 30th or something, or 29th. And nobody expected Sam Darnold to do what he's doing. When you saw that as well, because we all seen the Jets stories and we seen the mic'd up, I'm seeing ghosts out there and just, not doing well. But then clearly a coach can revive, a guy like Kevin O'Connell. Did you expect Sam Darnold to be the quarterback he is right? I mean, because right now he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL in a lot of metrics. Did you see that coming?
I didn't. They obviously, they drafted J.J. McCarthy, and he's a guy who's from, right around the neighborhood. I'm a high school coach, and the team he plays for is one of the teams that we play here in the state. And then obviously he transferred down to IMG because of the COVID rules, but they drafted him to be the quarterback, and then you bring in Sam Darnold. I guess they expected him to be the backup. And when you look at Sam Darnold, a guy who was highly touted, top pick, who had a lot of success in college, it just goes to show you, a lot of people throw around that buzzword. He's a bust. He can't play. But it's just all about, and as you know, Ron, it's about the situations. It's about being in the right fit, having the right infrastructure around you, having the right playbook and scheme, and also having the right head coach and play caller lead you. And, you get over to Minnesota, you've got a great head coach that was a former quarterback. The scheme fits your skill set, and you have a head coach that's a quarterback that was a quarterback that understands how to put their game together, a game plan, right, that accentuates the skill set of his quarterback, of Sam Darnold. And not to mention, you got weapons. I mean, you got weapons all over the place. So that helps a lot. But it's good to see, a guy who was, highly touted coming into the league and hadn't really lived up to the expectations, actually playing well for the Vikings. So, at the end of the day, I know I'm a Bears guy, but I'm an NFC North fan because I want to see the division do well. And I'm like, hey, you know what? If the Bears aren't doing well, the NFC doing well, goes to show you that it's some great football being played. But here's the thing. It's a lot of great head coaches in the NFC North as well. And, that hurts my heart because Chicago, we're still trying to find our coach. But it's good to see that, the other teams in the NFC North dominating the NFL right now.
And one thing I'll say about the NFC North, and I feel like this, I didn't play in the NFC North. Well, I was with the Bears for a little bit, for 6 months. But the one thing a lot of former Vikings players, former Detroit Lions players, everybody doesn't want to see the Packers go, though. Like, let's be real. I think people are okay with the Vikings going. I think people are okay with the Lions going or the Bears. I feel like it's a unanimous, we don't want to see the Packers in the Super Bowl. I don't know what it is about the history of the Packers-Bears rivalry, the Vikings-Packers. We already know that's the border battle. But I feel like it's a resounding, the Vikings fans, I think they feel like they're okay because, and you've been there before, when they show the scores on the board, they only boo if the Packers are winning. Other than that, it's just kind of okay, yeah. But the Packers, every time, no matter what it is, or if they're losing, they cheer. But that's the only one where it's a resounding, no, we don't want to see the Packers go. I don't know what it is. But you brought up a good point about coaching. And so the Bears are going to be looking for a coach. If you were in an elevator, or you might be. Kevin Warren's our guy, former Vikings exec, and now he's the Bears president there. So if you're in the elevator, and I know Kevin's a great guy. If you're in the elevator with Kevin or Ryan Poles, and they're like, hey, J Mac, man, would you bring in Ben Johnson from the Lions? Are you thinking Caleb Williams needs an offense? Because you think about Sean McVay. You think about because look at Jared Goff. He goes to Detroit. They love him there. Ben Johnson takes care of him. He now, resurged and all of a sudden making $200 million. And the Rams are like, he got to the Super Bowl, but he's not going to win it for us. He might win one for the Lions. You look at Matthew Stafford, same thing. Never can get over the hump because the Lions were cheap. goes over to the Rams. Sean McVay gives him all the freedom he needs to go be great. You look at Brock Purdy. Everybody's saying, I don't know if he's going to. And look what he's doing there with his coach. And so when you think about all these coaches, Matt LaFleur, he's just had an embarrassment of riches of quarterbacks. Do you think Ben Johnson or a guy like a Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell type of guy, do you think that's what the Bears need to go after to help Caleb Williams out?
It's tough. When I look at Ben Johnson, right, obviously we know he's a high-level play caller. We know he can do that part of the thing, but it's totally different, as we know it, from just being the head coach of your offense in terms of now being the head coach of a team. So, and you also got to look at it like this, right? It's a lot easier calling plays when you have a great offensive line that's opening up holes. You've got a good quarterback, and you've got you had two good running backs that are able to run the football effectively. So, I'm not going to discredit Ben Johnson. I think he's a heck of a play caller, a heck of an offensive coordinator, but I think, it's tough. When I look at the other candidates, they may look at it like Mike Vrabel. They talk about Joe Brady. I say Joe Brady's kind of in a similar in a similar situation to Ben Johnson because he hasn't been a head coach. But I look at Vrabel, a guy who's been a head coach, a guy who's had success, a guy who's played for the Patriots and obviously was brought up knowing the Patriot way. So you have a guy who's a head coach and who knows what success looks like. And he's had success as a head coach. So if you want that proven commodity, then I think you got to take a hard look at Mike Vrabel. But if you just want the hot topic, the hot name, and you want a guy that can come in and hopefully help jumpstart this offense, then of course you're going to look at a Ben Johnson or Joe Brady. But you also got to look at the pieces that surround this offense. Like up front, the Bears don't have the hogs that Detroit has. So when he comes in, is it set up for success for him? Is he going to be able? Are you going to enable him to come in and be able to have his fingerprints on this roster, or is it going to be micromanaged by the GM, which obviously the GM has the final say, but he knows what it takes to get his offense to move. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of factors, I think, with this coaching hire that the Bears are going to have to go through in terms of, is Ryan Poles, our current GM, still going to be here? Are they going to let him pick the head coach? Is the head coach that come here, is he going to want to work with Ryan Poles? Right. So it's a lot of things, but I think, Ben Johnson, I'm not saying they can't do it. I think he has the opportunity to be a heck of a head coach. I like Vrabel as well. So those are the two guys I like. But we'll see where it goes. I think you've got to bring in a guy who's either can withstand and uphold a culture, in terms of the locker room, in terms of holding guys accountable, setting expectations on a daily basis. But you've also got to bring in a guy who can help develop a quarterback and help jumpstart an offense, in my opinion.
Yeah, and last one before we get out of here, man. You guys, I love, I follow you. I follow Spice, of course. That's my guy. We talk every day. But you guys have a ton of fun after football, man. Like life after football. Like you and I were talking about this on the sideline, man. Like I know for me, when I was out of football, I left Canada, coached with Dungy for a little bit for 2 years, but then kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was blessed with this opportunity to work with the Vikings and the Gophers and covering sports. And so it's been fun to be able to just go to games, be on the sideline, be at practice. And that you're doing the same thing, being around the team. I got to go with the Gophers when they played Indiana and, just being on the team playing and talking to the young guys about college football and my days playing and giving them advice. Like it keeps your mind fresh. Whereas I see former players, going through depression or whether, because everything's not CTE. I think people think everything's CTE. It's like some stuff is just depression, like just life change. Like you're not around the game anymore and you don't feel like you should be until you're back and you're like, oh man, this is cool. But you guys, man, like you former Bears, because a lot of you guys are in Chicago still, you guys make sure to hang out. And I saw, when Hester and Peppers, going into the Hall of Fame, you guys were there at the stadium when they got honored. But you guys continue to have fun, man. What is it like, man, just still having the fun with those guys, but also the stories you guys remember, like playing with those guys, man? Because, everybody doesn't get to play with Hall of Famers, and you had the opportunity to do that. So before we get out of here, man, like how has that been?
It's been awesome, man. It's like you said, we're done playing. You're trying to find your self-worth. You're used to being on somebody else's schedule. You don't know what direction to turn in, but when you talk about brotherhood, and a lot of people throw that word around loosely, we really had a brotherhood. So our bond that we've all created, a lot of the guys, we created that in the locker room, but it didn't just stay in the locker room. Like we always hung out together. All of our kids grew up together. even when we were playing, and that just extended through our retirement. Still vacation together. You know, I have the opportunity to coach high school football now, and I have Olin Kreutz and Rasheed Davis coach with me. Like you mentioned, Devin and obviously Spice, who we're both close with. So it's fun, man. It's fun to be around those guys. It's fun to see how their careers have taken off even after the game of football. And it's good to be able to have those guys as true brothers to lean on them with whatever, you know, advice. If you're trying to do something, they'll collaborate with you, just helping each other. Like, we're teammates forever. And when you have a strong culture, those are the things that happens. You know, you make brothers on the field, but your brothers off the field. So it's been great. And I think that's why a lot of the guys have stayed here in Chicago, because you have your immediate family, but we're all extended family. So it's been awesome, man. And you're our brother too, Ron. So anytime you ever need something, you know, we got your back too. So
Appreciate it.
It's just awesome to be around the locker room like we had, and a bunch of great guys that just happen to be good at football.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Well, that'll do it for us. I'm Ron Johnson. That's Jason McKie. Coming up next, we got the Daily 3. That's 3 minutes, 3 questions each. We'll do that after a word from our sponsors.
Today's show presented by FanDuel. NFL playoffs are almost here. Not too late to get in the regular season action, though, at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and they have upped the stakes. It was $150 in bonus bets last week. Now it's $250. All you have to do is win your first $5 bet. Again, new customers, win your first $5 bet, get $250 in bonus bets that you can spread around the NBA, NHL, college football playoff, or, of course, the NFL, Week 17, Week 18, and playoffs. Bet before the game, bet during the game when you get a hunch with their live wagering options. Bet who's going to score the first touchdown, anytime touchdown, last touchdown, yardage props, receiving, rushing, passing, all available for every game at FanDuel, FanDuel.com, FanDuel Sportsbook app. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
And now it's time for the Daily 3. 3 questions. Spend about a minute each today. Take it away, Sam.
All right. This came up on the football party yesterday. I want to run it by you. This is a tough question. Who would you rather have back next year for the Vikings? Sam Darnold or Brian Flores?
Ooh. Ooh. Oh, man, that's tough. I got to shoot. That is so tough. So here's the thing. I guess I kind of got to say Brian Flores, because like maybe I need to do a little bit more research. I know like the DB coach, and then the special teams coach, they're around Flores. So I don't know if they could, like, I don't know who's next in line. Like, I don't know if it's the D-line coach, because he's up there with the front 7 guys. Like, I don't know, because I don't know if anybody can replicate this defense. Now, we know the Dolphins, they loved Flores' defense so much, they kept a lot of his defense, or a couple of his defensive staff members, to say, hey, we're going to bring in a new head coach, but we need you guys to be here to run this defense. And the Dolphins did okay. I just haven't looked at their defensive numbers, to be honest, to see if it worked out in because he got fired in 2022, right? Would have been Flores' year leaving.
Because 22.
I know he spent 3 years with the Dolphins. So
I think
was
21.
Was it 21 he got fired? So 18, 19, 20, and then 21 he got fired. 22 Steelers, 23 Vikings, 24 Vikings. Yeah, so that makes sense. So when you think about that, we'd have to go back and look at the 2021 Dolphins defense if it actually worked. Did firing Flores and keeping his guys work? And that's the question. So I got to go with Flores right away, just because I feel like, you got Kirk Cousins now as an option to come back. You got Danny Dimes. And you got J.J. McCarthy, and I feel like Kevin O'Connell is the answer to all of it. So I got to go with the defensive guy.
It's changing, though, on Darnold. I mean, every passing week, that guy looks better and better, more dynamic. I mean, he's leading you to wins. It's not like you're winning in spite of him.
True.
Man, this is the biggest question that we faced at quarterback in a long time.
True.
But as long as you're not paying him like the Kirk Cousins deal, like 4 years, 180.
Right.
I might even lean Darnold at this point if you can get a fair deal on it. It's going to be tough though, because he knows he is worth a fortune now, and his agent is going to say, "Hey man, like think about your future, think about your family." It's going to be tempting for him to take that.
Yeah. Somebody asked me that. Maybe the football party, you guys asked me that, and I'm like, would you rather win, or would you rather have $120 million? And I think most guys, I hate to say this, guys won't admit it, they're going to take the $120 million and go play for a terrible organization. Like, because that's guaranteed. That's guaranteed financial freedom to say, you know what? I might suck for the next 2 or 3 years on whatever team I'm on, but I got $120 million. My family is taken care of. And I think that's the key. Like, yeah, winners want to win, but then there is how much are you willing to sacrifice to not make that much money? Like, is a Super Bowl that important in your legacy, or do you want to take care of your family? Because everybody doesn't win. And some people win and get the money. You got Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, like Matthew Stafford. They've won and they got the money. Dan Marino never won. Now, he was great, never won though. Would he have taken less money maybe later in his career? Yeah. But early on, nah. Let me give them financial freedom, and I want to be able to take care of my family forever. What's the next one?
Next one, Julius Randle is under fire. The Wolves have lost 3 in a row. Randle, had there been like highlight reels of his lack of defensive effort, he's turning the ball over 7 times last night. Could the Wolves possibly trade Julius Randle, Ron, at the deadline?
Yeah, I would say so. And again, it's the whole separate apron talk. It confuses the heck out of me with this whole separate second apron, and that's why they had to get rid of Cat and blah blah. The problem is, does Julius Randle have a market right now? Like, that's the problem with the trade. Is like, who wants that? Like, when you watch what he's done, like when he was with the Knicks, it felt like, okay, if I get this guy around the right guys, I can make this guy work. I am not one to go back, but I wish we had Cat. Like, I was not sure, but now I'm off the Randle train, at least for now. I do wish we had Cat back. Cat looks like he's thriving in New York a little bit. It looked like early on, it was like, oh, I don't know if that's going to work either. But it seems like he's found his niche and he's found his way because New York market, more so, I think he realized I can't take a night off. Like, I can't have a poor performance because the New York media will eat me alive. And so it feels like he's dialed in a little bit. Yeah, and it just sucks that that's how Cat had to get motivated, was being traded and feeling, like because even after that one game, they were like, hey, what? He's like, well, I got some stuff to say. He's like, well, this is the best way to say it. He's like, no, I'm not saying it on TNT. I'm not doing this. What are you thinking? I'm not that dumb. So clearly he has an opinion. Clearly he wasn't happy with the trade. He's not going to DiVincenzo the bit and get on the free throw line and yell at the coaches for the Timberwolves. But, like, Cat was not happy. So, yeah, I would trade him. I think he's going to get traded. The problem is, like, can you get anything for him that is of value besides looking like you're just waving the white flag? And this might be a black eye on Tim Connelly's resume.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the incentive to trade him is that somebody would see the contract and say, all right, like, if we take on his contract, we get rid of it immediately, and then we've got cap space. For the Wolves, like, what are you getting in return, and do you keep your flexibility? Because the Wolves also, like, the nice part about Randle is the contract's probably done after this year. You can just say goodbye, shake his hand, and say, this didn't work out, best of luck to you, and then you have cap space. So you don't want to sacrifice that in a trade. You don't want to take on money that suddenly you don't want to have to pay down the road. But it's messy. You're right. His market's probably bad right now because he's a chemistry killer. He just is not really a flow player in this offense or defense. Last one, looking ahead to the college football playoff quarterfinals, Ron. What's your favorite matchup?
OHIO. Oregon versus Ohio State, the rematch. That was what we were supposed to get for the Big Ten championship, but Michigan thwarted, I think is the word, thwarted that effort. And so we didn't get it. And so now we get it again. I think it was a 1-point game last time Ohio State lost to Oregon. Ohio State looked really good against Tennessee. Ohio State looks like they were reading their headlines and they're like, oh, okay. Ryan Day's like, oh, you think I'm not a good coach? All right, let's see what happens. And so I am now thinking the way Ohio State hit Tennessee in the mouth. Now, Oregon's different. They spread the ball out. Dylan Gabriel gets the ball out of his hands extremely fast. But I'm looking forward to that Ohio State-Oregon game. That's the one for me. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, that's the best game. I think watching the running backs this weekend, so that would be Ashton Genty in the Boise State-Penn State game. And then
that could be a good one.
Yeah, and Cam Scatterbo for Arizona State taking on Texas. Those two running backs are going to be a lot of fun to watch. But then the best game, you're right, it's Ohio State, Oregon.
Yeah, that's the one I think everybody's going to be watching. Everybody's going to be dialed into. But I will say, for the simple, like, Penn State beating Boise State, Texas killing Arizona State. That's what a lot of these decision makers want to see, because now this is going to give them the right next year to say, you know what, this is why we're putting Alabama in this. This is why we're going to put so-and-so in this. Like all those big SEC, Big Ten teams that don't have a great, so like if you don't have a great record, meaning you lost 3, but you've beat some really good teams and played some of the best teams to the wire, we're putting you in this. If you are Indiana, for instance, and you did not have to play Ohio State, Michigan, well, I wouldn't even count Michigan this year, but Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, we can't put you in. You didn't play anybody. And so now that's going to push the Big Ten, which I would do it to get rid of some of these non-conference games and say, you know what, let's do more like the SEC. Maybe let's do 2 non-conference games now, and let's get more conference games so that we can play more of the people across the way. So now you get Oregon, you get Ohio State more often. And if you lose, you lose, but at least now you have a better strength of schedule than playing, and nothing against these teams, Indiana, sorry, but Illinois, Purdue, Rutgers, Maryland, like that. To me, you don't deserve to be in it beating those 4 teams. Like that to me doesn't prove that you deserve to be in this. And they got exposed. And everybody saw it. And that's why, I mean, Penn State absolutely crushed SMU. Same thing with SMU. Like it's going to force teams to say, I need to play more Power 4 schools. Like I need to get more of these top teams and stop playing, some of these weaker conference teams. And maybe this makes a better case for the Big Ten to get a team like Stanford. To get a team, because Notre Dame now is like, look, we don't need you guys. We needed you guys, but now we can get in this without you guys because they changed it to 12. So I think that gave Notre Dame the feeling to say, we can stay in the ACC. We'll be fine. But these other teams, we might need to look at our schedule. But I don't know. What are you thinking too with the quarterfinals? Is there any way that they go to 16 teams and take the buys out of it?
Always possible. I don't think. I mean, I guess. That doesn't really add that many more games. I guess it adds 4 games for ratings purposes, but man, you get messy. You get messy once you get to 16. I'm good at 12, to be honest with you, because I think we saw already that in that first round it could get a little bit lopsided, which was the fear. That was the fear that they weren't going to be competitive, and none of them were competitive. Not even the 8-9 game. I mean, Ohio State just rolled over Tennessee, so I'm good. I think the semifinals are going to be some great matchups. We're going to have some huge name schools in here, and I think the champion this year is really going to feel like a champion. They're going to have to go through a test, which I appreciate. So I think it's good. I think this will be a good weekend, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, check out our Locked On Sports postcast on YouTube, following every Twins, Vikings, Gophers, or Wolves game. Luke Inman is broadcasting live with team experts. Never miss a postcast by subscribing to Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. You can also get Locked On Sports Minnesota on Amazon Fire, on your Roku TV device that you might have just got for Christmas. I didn't tell you, but your husband got you a TV. So make sure you use that Roku TV. Download the Locked On Sports Minnesota app. But on YouTube, you get all the updates on your phone, wherever you are. You can be leaving the game in your car. Boom. Bluetooth it to your car. You can listen to us on the way home from the game, because that traffic after the Packers game is going to be crazy. But what better way to spend it than checking out Locked On Sports Minnesota? I want to thank you guys and have a Merry Christmas.